really pay attention to the time. I wasn't sure if you were able to see the timer also.
I was not looking at the timer.
Okay. But yeah, again, very interesting topic. At first, I was thinking, oh gosh, we're gonna talk about aging. Not a good subject. Kind of depressing, but I think your information was very helpful, and it's in line with what I've heard. And honestly, myself, I preach the same thing myself. I just wish people would listen more. So moving on to our next speaker, looks like he's already prepared and set up.
Wait, you wanna give 1 minute for the feedback?
Yes, thank you. Now, give us a minute so people can provide feedback to Maha.
Glennis, I know it's a depressing subject, so I had to add a positive twist to it.
Thank you.
Now I have to read some fiction. I mostly read nonfiction.
And thank you, Shehu, for reaching out. You are doing the odd counting, correct? We can't hear you, Shehu, so you can confirm by chat if you like.
Glennis, that's 1 minute.
Thank you, Nagin. All right, so moving on to our next speaker, Steve Miller. He's working on using presentation software, and it's a 5 to 7 minute speech, and it's entitled Gleanings from Ford Soft Skills, September. Steve Miller attended a few of the Ford Soft Skills September classes. He thought one was outstanding, that was Effective Public Speaking by Carlos Fernandez. Steve wants to share with his Toastmasters Club what he learned there so we can all communicate our message better. Steve Miller.
Thank you, Glennis. Fellow Toastmasters and most welcome guests. I really feel privileged to be able to share what I learned from the Ford September soft skills. I went to a number of the seminars, but the one that I thought was the best was this one by Carlos Fernandez. And Badija, by the way, Carlos is in Ford of Mexico. Carlos got this from listening to a lot of TED Talks, mostly. Now, we in Toastmasters know a lot of this stuff, but a lot of this I didn't know. And I thought this would be very helpful, both for me to give it and for you to hear it. A great thing is that in Toastmasters, we can put what he's taught us into practice. Now, just by the way, you see I've embedded myself into this presentation. That is my own kind of fun idea to do. That Carlos didn't do that. This is something new that I'm trying out. So the first one is simple. Know your audience. The suggestion that he had here is show your presentation to someone who knows nothing about the subject and see what they get out of it. That's a good test. That's something I could try it out on, like my wife or one of my daughters especially. And that's something I would like to use. Next one is, I think we all know this. This is rehearse your presentation, know the script, but don't memorize it. It's good to memorize the opening and closing, but your interior part, it's good to be able to talk about it to your audience. Your jokes also, you got to know pretty well. And then practice it out loud so that you just get used to doing it. And he has this statement, don't do it too many times or it won't sound natural. And that is often the case. Professionals that I've heard say when you do it more often, you don't necessarily have to become unnatural, but I have seen it a lot with some very good speakers and Toastmasters. After they practice it a lot, it becomes less inspiring. And I think what you got to do there is always keep the informal and audience connection and talking to the audience part of it. Don't recite it, because when you recite, it sounds like the audience can tell it. Now this is very important. People read faster than you speak. And people are bad at doing two things at the same time. So if people are reading ahead in your slide, they're not really going to be listening to you. And our memory is not very good. And he cited a study when people are going on an airplane and they call for the passengers to board. A person will look at his seat number 6 times on average, because they look at it. What was my seat number? Put it back in their pocket. Oh, what was it? Pull it out again. And just keep one message per slide, because that's all people can handle. 1 + 1 = 0 in this case, because you can't get, the audience doesn't get both messages, they get one. Now you notice what I did here is I have the slide, I have it build. That's so that you don't read ahead as I'm talking. Now I'm going to tell you an interesting thing about this. In church, I would send evaluations to our pastor after he would speak, and usually he's a very good speaker. And I would notice at a certain point in his message, I would get tired, and I would tell him, at this point I got tired. Well, then I said, let me set up your slides this time. So when I set up his slides, I set them up so that they builded like this. And I found I did not get tired. Well, what I realized is happening is I was trying to read the slides and listen to him at the same time, and reading ahead specifically, and that made me tired. So you don't want your audience to get tired out. Remember the sacred order to present data. Now this I have not heard before, and I tried looking for this on the internet and I could not find anything about it, but it really does make sense. This is more for us engineers. Start with graphs, so you give the big picture of the data, then go to tables, so you show the data behind the graphs, and then you go to bullet points. You go to the conclusions you get from the data. Now, this was my favorite part. Studies have shown people focus on 5 things. Now, I want to ask you all to unmute yourself. What things do you think a person focuses on in your presentation? Tell me one thing, anything.
Person?
Your voice.
Your voice. Okay, that's any particular thing about your voice, like
Emotions, excitement.
emotions? Okay. Well, any other
Graphics, if any.
graphics? Yeah. Okay.
Facial expressions.
Facial expressions. Okay.
How you portray yourself, like if you sound like you know what you're talking about.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But yeah, these things are going to be different because they surprised me. They really surprised me. And I'll show you what they were. Movement. Now we ought to know that, because all animals, they notice movement. If you freeze, they may not notice you. Well, so when you move, when you put a movement in, be aware that attracts people's attention. It can also be distracting. If you're moving and you're not moving in an intelligent way or in a meaningful way, that's going to be distracting away from your message, and people are going to pay attention to the movement more than your message. And the second one of the 5, and by the way, I'm going to quiz you on the end at all these 5, is contrast. So that would be like what Nagam said about graphics. When you have, everything kind of looks the same and then something looks different, that's what they're going to pay attention to. Size, if things are small and something is bigger than the rest, or that's similar to contrast. And the power of the pause. If you pause before you say something, people are going to be listening. What is he going to say next? And they're going to really listen. And the last one was shocking to me. It's true for me, but I didn't think it was going to be true for anyone else. And that is, people actually pay attention to crutch words. They actually listen to those uhs and ums and ahs. Now, as a Toastmaster, of course, I've been trained to listen to them, but actually everyone does. And I think it's a natural ability people have, because those uhs and ahs tell them that that's an area you don't really believe what you're saying. And also just keep the number of items per slide to maximum 6. And the number of slides is not relevant. That is not something at least in my area at Ford, we pay attention to. We try to cut things down to a number of slides, and then we end up putting more stuff on a slide. But really the number of slides is not relevant, but the total number of of points you have is really what's relevant. And try to keep the number max 6. Yeah, this is just some examples. So here's a typical slide. Here's a list of winners. Now look at this slide. I thought this was a good idea. You see the difference? He changed it so that the emphasis is on the people rather than the title. The title, just because it's the title, it does not have to be the biggest thing. And now it emphasizes the people. And then here's a contrast. So here, I'll talk about Lewis and then talk about Sebastian. Now here is a table. And I want you to pay attention to group 3. Okay, here's your quiz. What are the 5 things people pay attention to?
Movement, contrast.
Crutch words.
Yeah.
Pause.
Movement.
Pause. And yeah, she said movement. And the other one is very close. I think you got them all. Size. The size is pretty much very similar to contrast. So practice this in Toastmasters. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Steve. Nagam, give us a minute to provide feedback to Steve for his speech.